As you start to go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole that is music making, you will start to develop your own systems, your own workflow, and your own way of going about business. And that's just part of the process. That's awesome, especially as it comes from things that you learn along the way. And in my 9 years of writing my own music, I have developed one and only law. One law, one commandment, if you will, that I follow every single time without fail. I'm going to show you what that law is, why I hold it so near and dear, and how you can apply it to yourself whenever you are building up your mentality and your mindset when it comes to music making. Let's do this. Welcome back to Three Strings Music, where we celebrate growth together, both in music and in life. My name is Clayton Roberts, though most people call me Dewie. Glad to have you back. I'm pretty pumped about this one. This is yet another one of those ones I've been wanting to tackle for a while because I think it's really, really important to hear. So important, in fact, that I want to give you my free gift even more now. If you haven't gotten it already, you can grab my 30-minute music basics guide. It's just a simple guide I put together of level 1 music terms that you can use to get started and have a better understanding of how all of this works. It's bullet points, it's got pictures, things you can use as reference anytime you need it as a nice little pocket guide to take with you. And it's completely free as my gift to you. All you have to do is just go to threestringsmusic.com/basics to pick it up. Again, that's the number 3, stringsmusic.com/basics. So yeah, let's get right into this one. What exactly is this big bad law that I'm talking about? Well, it's something that is really near and dear to my heart, and I feel like it's something that many of you could greatly benefit from if you don't already. It's a very important rule of mine, but it can be summed up entirely in just one sentence. And here it is. Write this down on a piece of paper. If it sounds good, then it is good. Yeah, that's it. That's the whole rule I'm talking about here. If it sounds good, then it is good. What exactly does this mean? Well, this can take on a variety of meanings depending on what you're doing, but I think a good starting point of how to look at this would be to just look at the bigger picture in terms of music theory in general. The truth about theory is it's nice, it's very, very helpful, and I use it all the time, but you don't need it to do this. And that's completely true. Even if you have never played a single note in your life, you can sit at a piano and just play random notes until you come up with something that sounds pleasing to the ear. Something that makes you go, hey, I kind of like that. That sounds pretty good. And you know what? Regardless of if you've been doing this for 9 years or 9 minutes, that's awesome. If it sounds good to you and you're happy with it, that should be all that matters. And yes, I say this as someone who is fully aware that he teaches music theory on here every now and then. And I'm going to keep teaching music theory on here. Don't misunderstand me on this. Music theory is something you don't need, but it is very, very nice and very helpful to you. That's my point. Use it as a tool to help you, not a law that you must follow. Aside from an angry YouTube comment or two, there's no music police that's going to come in and arrest you if you do something that breaks a rule of music theory. In fact, some of the best music that's ever been written was done so by breaking a lot of the rules of music theory. So if you're ever working on a piece of music and you think to yourself, oh, I kind of like how this sounds, but those notes go out of the scale that I'm using, so I can't really use it. Oh yes, you can. I will totally go over that kind of stuff in more detail in later videos, but I really want to communicate to you that music theory, while very nice and very helpful, is not the law of the land anytime you sit at a piano or pick up a guitar. So in case it wasn't already clear enough, this is something that I care pretty deeply about. But why? Why is this such an important principle to me that it merits its own video? There's a variety of reasons, but one of the ones that comes to the forefront of my mind is something that happened to me many years ago. Back in, I want to say 2013, 2014, somewhere in that range, I was at one of my local brony meetups and I met somebody who I had never seen before. Things started off okay, they seemed nice, they seemed chill, but then we started talking about music, which is something I love talking about in case it wasn't obvious. And then the conversation started to take this weird and kind of uncomfortable turn about, rather than talking about how much fun music is, it was more starting to turn into a competition of like how much you did or didn't know about it. And since by that point I had only been writing songs for at most a year, it started to take a bit of a turn that left me feeling a little, well, uncomfortable. They started treating things like it was a laundry list of things you needed to know. It's like, oh, you don't know this? Oh, come on. You don't know about that? Are you kidding me? And it just kept going on and on and on and on until finally they said the quiet part out loud, you're not a real musician. And suddenly, thanks to that conversation, I was deemed not a real musician in their eyes because I couldn't really carry a conversation with them about theory to the level that they expected of me. Nowadays, if somebody tried to have that same kind of conversation with me and turned it into that much of a needless competition, I'd probably just laugh. But back in those days, it actually left me really, really discouraged. And it resulted in me doubling down and learning as much as I could about theory. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's not so bad. That's a good side effect that it motivated you to go and learn a lot more about this stuff. And you're right. While it came from a place of hurt, I did start to learn quite a few things that would be really, really good to apply to future songs. However, there's one glaring problem that came with that. The future songs part. Because I became so obsessed with learning this and that, I forgot the most important part of it, actually applying it. I couldn't start working on any more songs until I knew everything I was doing and making sure that every note was perfectly in key, using the perfect theory concepts that made it just sound like the next stairway to heaven. And looking back on it, this is kind of a version of that ceremony syndrome thing I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Like I said, it comes in many, many forms. And this one was a pretty damaging one. But as I said, in that time, I learned a lot of really useful stuff that I still use a lot today. But I think the problem stems from, at that time, the way I looked at theory. I looked at it like this was some sort of music law school that I had to follow every rule to the letter, and that person was completely right. But now, 7-8 years later, I see that that's not true. So ultimately, the takeaway from that story is not, oh, don't go learn a bunch of theory and whatnot. I still use plenty of the things I learned in that time. However, I now know that music theory and theory concepts are tools and guidelines, not laws and rules that you must follow if you ever want to be taken seriously. Sometimes I think we get caught up in being so obsessed with the technical side of things that we forget that at the end of the day, it's an art form like painting, writing, poetry, sculpting, whatever else you can think of. It's how we choose to express ourselves and share that with the world. And so the idea of tying laws or rules to how we express ourselves is silly. It's so unnecessarily limiting to beautiful forms of self-expression. I think it's way healthier to look at this stuff as recommendations of things I would and would not advise doing, be it through music theory concepts, talking to other musicians, or, my personal favorite, trial and error. It will always be a case of things I recommend doing versus things I recommend not doing, but I will never ever tell you you must do something. The exact same principle would apply if this was a channel about painting or creative writing or sculpting. When you compare this to those, if it looks good, then it is good. Just like here, if it sounds good, then it is good. So if it's something you don't need to do and it's just a good idea, why? What makes it so helpful and beneficial? Why learn it and apply it if it's just optional? Why make it a part of 3 strings music if you don't need it? Well, there's a variety of reasons, and let me give you a couple right now. With tips and tricks that you pick up from it, you can take something that would already sound pretty good to making it sound like something that sounds really good. And your knowledge of things like music theory will help you understand how that works and how you were able to do that. And I think that actually segues nicely into my second reason. Communication. Look at this as a way to communicate your vision, communicate your music to other musicians. And I'm not just saying that because this is fun stuff to geek out over. It is, but there's more to it. It helps us have a better understanding of what musicians are doing with their music and why things can sound as nice as they do. Going back to that thing I mentioned earlier about how anybody can just sit at a piano and start playing random notes until they come up with something that sounds good to them, think of music theory as that friend who comes and listens to you and just watches you over your shoulder. He watches the notes you're playing, hears what you're doing, and occasionally leans down and says, hey, try this, try this. Hey, what about this? Take a look at that. What do you think of this? It's something that helps you, not you serve it. Just do your best and try not to overthink this stuff. If you're messing around and you come up with something that sounds really good, but it seems to contradict your understanding of a specific theory concept, well, don't worry about it. All that matters is if it sounds good, then it is good. And like I said earlier, some of the best music ever was written by breaking the rules. Honestly, the funny thing about all of this is a realization that hit me while I was making this video. It's entirely possible that by this point, the stuff that I'm talking about is already just common sense among everyone, as a sort of, well, yeah, no duh, Dewey, we all know that. And if this is a battle that I no longer have to keep fighting, great! I'm totally cool with that. However, if this is a message that some people still need to hear, yourself included, then this makes it all worth it. This is an art form. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is if it sounds good. If it sounds good, it is good. But at the same time, don't let that stop you from learning all that you can. Music theory is awesome. I love it. And the fact that I don't need it, and the fact that I'm not a guru at it, makes it all the more enjoyable. It helps to make this stuff fun for me, and I can only hope the same for you. Just have fun and enjoy the learning process. Have fun growing and getting better with your playing and your songwriting. But just don't let any of this stop you from actually making the music that you want to. And you know what? A lot of the musicians, artists, and bands that you listen to don't know everything about music theory. They don't know everything about music in general, but that's the beauty of it. They never needed to know everything to make the music that you love and connect with. Just have fun and enjoy yourself. If it sounds good, it is good. And if you do end up downloading my 30-minute music basics guide at 3stringsmusic.com/basics for free, then I can only hope that this video offers a more enhanced perspective of how to look at the information in that guide. The stuff in there is really nice to know, it's incredibly useful, and I apply the info in it every single day I work on music. But no matter what's in there, no matter what else I talk about on this channel, I know that at the end of the day, it's nice to know, not I must know or I'm not good at this. Thank you very much for joining me on this one. This subject means a lot to me and it's something that is very important, but I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I'd love to get your thoughts below. If you agree with me, leave a comment. If you think I'm an idiot and have no idea what I'm talking about, leave a comment. I just want stuff like this to start encouraging and good faith conversation, regardless of if you agree or disagree. In the meantime, if you get stumped on something while you're working on music, just repeat to yourself, if it sounds good, it is good. Theory just may help you understand why it sounds good. Thank you again. Have a great day. Take care of yourself, and I will see you next week.